March 18th carries revolts, reforms, storms, and art heists stretching across 2 millennia. Imagine following the calendar around the globe as empires sway, workers organize, generals gamble, storms roar, cosmonauts drift, and thieves vanish into the night. We'll guide you from Rome's marble floors to the cold vacuum of low Earth orbit, pausing at every hinge where history creaked open. Let's rewind. This is your This Day in History. On March 18, 37, the Roman Senate annulled Tiberius's will and hailed Gaius Caligula as princeps, signaling a euphoric transfer of power after years of suspicion. Faced with a weary populace, senators leaned into Caligula's popular lineage as grandson of beloved Germanicus, promising a return to open-handed governance. The annulment swept aside Tiberius's complex succession clause that favored joint rule with the Praetorian prefect, consolidating authority in one charismatic figure. Romans projected childhood memories of little Gaius marching with the legions, believing nostalgia could substitute for a stable constitutional plan. Yet the rush to acclaim foreshadowed how unchecked adulation could sour, setting the stage for a reign that would veer from adored to feared in only a few years. On March 18, 1766, Parliament repealed the Stamp Act, bowing to colonial boycotts while insisting on its theoretical right to tax overseas subjects. Months of coordinated non-importation agreements from New England to Charleston rattled London's mercantile lobby, turning economic pain into political leverage. William Pitt framed repeal not as weakness, but as savvy imperial stewardship, arguing that persuasion would bind colonies tighter than stamped parchment. American celebrations mixed bonfires, bells, and printed broadsides thanking Allied MPS, even as radicals warned that parliamentary supremacy language in the Declaratory Act hinted at future clashes. For a brief lull, imperial commerce breathed easier. But the episode taught colonists that collective pressure could extract concessions from across the ocean. On March 18, 1834, 6 farm laborers from Tolpuddle were sentenced to transportation for forming a friendly society, igniting outrage across industrial Britain. Their supposed crime, swearing an oath to keep wages from collapsing below subsistence, revealed how nervous landowners were about organized rural labor. Tens of thousands gathered in London petitions, blending artisan radicals and moderate reformers, making the martyrs a unifying cause for emergent unionism. Transportation to Australia was meant to frighten workers back into docility. Yet the spectacle instead painted the Crown as vindictive toward honest laborers. Within 2 years, relentless petitions forced pardons and their eventual return, proving that messaging solidarity could bend imperial punishment. On March 18, 1848, Berliners erected barricades against King Frederick William IV's troops, fusing liberal demands with street combat in the heart of Prussia. News from Paris and Vienna traveled by telegraph and rail, convincing Berlin crowds that rapid mobilization could force constitutions before repression arrived. After dozens lay dead, the king staged a somber homage, riding through the city beneath the revolutionary tricolor, a symbolic concession meant to diffuse fury. Citizens' committees hurried to compile lists of freedom's press, jury trial, representative assemblies, hoping to codify promises before soldiers regrouped. Although royal authority would reassert itself by year's end, the March days taught Prussia's rulers that public opinion could no longer be ignored without cost. On March 18, 1871, Parisians seized artillery on Montmartre after refusing to surrender their cannons to Versailles troops, birthing the Paris Commune. Neighborhood networks led by market women and seamstresses relayed alarms faster than government columns could advance, turning logistics into revolution. Communards rushed to craft social reforms, remitting rents, reopening factories under worker control, separating church and state, while under looming military threat. They fortified boulevards with overturned omnibuses and paving stones, practicing citizen defense in the shadow of housemen's wide streets. Control of telegraph lines let the commune beam their manifesto to provincial towns, sparking solidarity clubs, even as conservative newspapers vilified them. Versailles regrouped for the brutal May assault. But March 18th remained a testament to urban self-government and the risks reformers take when central authority falters. On March 18, 1913, King George I of Greece was assassinated while strolling in newly liberated Thessaloniki, just weeks after Balkan victories. His death threatened the fragile unity forged against the Ottoman Empire, injecting uncertainty into negotiations over Macedonia and the Aegean. Crown Prince Constantine inherited both the throne and deep skepticism from allies who distrusted his German ties at the dawn of Europe's wider crisis. Athenian crowds lined the Panathenaic Stadium as the monarch's coffin passed, blending grief with anxiety about whether gains from war would endure. Foreign ministers recalculated allegiances, realizing that leadership changes in small kingdoms could tip balances that would soon matter to all of Europe. On March 18, 1915, Allied dreadnoughts surged into the Dardanelles, only to be shredded by Ottoman mines and shore batteries guarding the strait. Within minutes, ships like Bouvet went under, demonstrating how carefully laid minefields could humble the world's most modern fleets. Ottoman crews, many led by German advisors, endured relentless shelling, yet kept firing, using narrow waters to magnify defensive power. Losses forced admirals to halt the purely naval gambit and call for ground troops, setting the stage for the costly Gallipoli land campaign. The setback reshaped colonial forces, too. Australian and New Zealand units soon found themselves committed to a theater born from this failed thrust. On March 18, 1925, the Tri-State Tornado began its 219-mile rampage across Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana, the deadliest twister in U.S. history. Communities like Murfreesboro were shredded in minutes, leaving rescuers to comb splintered neighborhoods without modern warning systems. Meteorologists later reconstructed how colliding air masses and jet stream placement created an atmosphere ripe for an unusually long-track vortex. Relief trains rushed in supplies, while volunteers organized ad hoc morgues and shelters, a grim rehearsal for future disaster management. The catastrophe spurred investment in warning networks and public drills, embedding preparedness into Midwestern civic life. On March 18, 1937, a gas leak ignited beneath the New London School in Texas, leveling a modern campus packed with students. An unodorized cloud of raw natural gas had accumulated after budget-minded trustees tapped a residue line from nearby oil fields. Rescuers clawed through debris for hours, confronting one of the deadliest school disasters in American history. Texas swiftly mandated that odorants be added to commercial gas, a policy that would spread nationwide and avert countless unseen dangers. Survivors dedicated memorial scholarships and annual services, transforming loss into vigilance for future classrooms. On March 18, 1965, Alexei Leonov exited Voskhod 2 and performed humanity's first spacewalk, tethered above Siberia's frozen rivers. Inside the cramped capsule, Pavel Belyayev managed life support systems, while Leonov's suit ballooned dangerously in vacuum. Leonov had to bleed pressure from his suit just to squeeze back inside, a risky improvisation that underscored the experiment's peril. Engineers at Zvezny Gorodok listened to garbled transmissions, learning that future extravehicular missions would need redesigned airlocks and suits. A faulty re-entry orientation dumped the capsule far off target, forcing recovery crews to ski in overnight. Another reminder that exploration rarely goes to plan. By mastering a 12-minute walk, Leonov opened the path for orbital construction, satellite repairs, and eventually moonwalks. On March 18, 1990, two men dressed as police bluffed their way into Boston's Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum and bound the night guards. Posing as responders to a disturbance, the thieves convinced guards to leave the desk, then taped them to pipes in the basement. They sliced masterpieces from frames, Rembrandt, Vermeer, Degas, moving methodically for 81 minutes without triggering additional alarms. Boston police only discovered the heist at shift change, long after the thieves vanished into the quiet Sunday streets. Despite global investigations and record rewards, no arrests have recovered the works, turning the empty frames into permanent reminders. The Gardner keeps those frames on display, an institutional vow that cultural memory remembers both the art and the night it disappeared. We've stepped through empires, parliaments, factory floors, barricades, battle lines, classrooms, orbits, and galleries, tracing how March 18th keeps bending history's arc in unexpected directions. Until tomorrow, this was This Day in History.